Do not confuse this with treatment or mental health advice or direction. Nothing on this podcast is made to supplement or supersede the relationship and direction of your mental health caretakers. Although David Kozlowski is a licensed marriage and family therapist, he is not functioning as a certified mental health professional in this environment. And same applies to any professional who may appear on the Light the Fight podcast. Welcome to the OG Therapy.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of OG Therapy, and I got a repeat offender OG today. My man, Kenneth Scott. Kenneth, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and chopping up with me, man. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm always glad to be here. Home, so it feels good.
That's right. That's right.
You know it.
You're in town doing a little speaking. Remind everybody, well, actually, you just did it. I don't know. Did you post about it online?
Earlier this morning,
Okay.
I posted online. It was at a Camp U leadership, and I was speaking on the importance of leadership and basically how the relationships that you have with your individual mates, peers, and even with yourself is important, and how to leverage that as your platform being an elite student athlete.
Yeah, and so and I appreciate when you're talking about all those things. You know, we've been having some good talks about you saying, yeah, man, this whole social health thing is real.
Social health, baby. Social health. That's what it is.
It's real. It's real. Well, let's talk about it a little bit because if someone's tuning into this episode and they've never seen you on the podcast before, then let me just tell you a little bit about former University of Utah wide receiver, TED Talk
You know it.
speaker. That's what's
Let's
up.
get it. We in here.
Yep. And father, two beautiful
Yes.
daughters that they're going to have some brand new
Dope
beautiful
fans.
shoes, right? And then also too, beautiful wife,
Mhm.
living currently in Houston, Texas.
Right.
But we try to put the hook in his mouth. We're trying to reel him in.
You know it.
Trying to pull him back
Yep.
to the 801 and or the 385, depending on when you got your cell phone.
That's true. That's true.
But the reason why I always have Kenneth on, Kenneth a long time ago did me a great favor. He came and supported the teenagers at my nonprofit called Quit Trippin'. We were holding weekly groups out in Daybreak and sometimes out in Pleasant Grove. So he was nice enough. He come out. In fact, when he first came out, we told this on the podcast before, he's going through a bad injury. Senior year of college, broke your leg.
Yeah.
And broke it real good. Not like one of those little
Real
baby
good.
breaks. It's the type of break where you're like, why me?
Real
Why
good.
is this like where he had to have a scooter? You know,
Mhm.
like, you know.
That was my
He
vehicle.
had like a little sidecar next to the scooter for like lunches and
Had to
snacks
get a
and
license
stuff.
plate on it.
Get a license plate, one of those little glow lights in the bottom.
Yeah.
And so you did a great favor for me, and most importantly, you did it for the kids too. And you've, like you've said, you've never turned down the opportunity to help youth and kids. And so throughout the years, you know, a couple times I had you come help me out when I'd go speak at some high schools.
Yes.
Now you're speaking at high schools. You're doing leadership committees and presentations. But more recently, you have a book that we want to talk about, and also too this week or next week, I should say, is coming week. We're going to be doing our second OG Therapy high school presentation. But the first time we posted about it, and we're going to be doing that with our good friend Ro Joe.
Yes.
And so let's talk about the book. Let's talk about that. But more importantly, every guest I have on this podcast has a lot of experience working with youth, whether they're a parent, father, whether they're a football coach, whether they're a skills coach, teacher, whatever it may be. And you, for your young age, you've made it a priority to make youth something that you want to help out, and not just help them out in the service type of way, but really going out of your way to, whether it's writing a book, whether it's your TED Talk, whether it's the assemblies with me, or your own assemblies as well. You've put it as a priority because business opportunities are always going to be there.
Right.
And if you're listening to this podcast, you didn't know this, it doesn't pay the heftiest ransom to be helping out the youth. In fact, there's a saying in markets that people get paid for the problems they're able to solve. Most of the time, that's true. There's always the exception to the rule. High school teacher.
Right.
High school teachers, I don't think anyone would deny that that's a very important job.
Very.
Middle school teacher, elementary school teacher. And they don't really get enough cake to go feed everybody in the family. You know, everybody knows that. In fact, I always hear people say, man, high school teachers should get paid more. Next. Okay, anyways, hey, pass the salt. Like, everyone says it, right? And so coaches, people that work with youth, that's not any of those professions, unless you own a huge, large facility, you're doing private training with hundreds and hundreds of kids. You're not making a ton of money. And even then, you probably have to see lots of kids to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So you've really made it a point not just to help kids with your message, the things you're talking about, but to also teach them how to help themselves.
For sure.
So I want to talk about that with the book, because that's what your book is focused around,
Mm-hmm.
specifically student athletes.
Right.
And everyone that's ever played sports, listening to this podcast, you know that when you're done playing sports, by the way, there is an end.
Yes.
Everyone's done.
Yep.
Some people are done in middle school. Some people are done middle high school, end of high school, college,
Right.
pros. There is an expiration date,
Mm-hmm.
and it's coming for you at some
For
point.
sure.
So when you're done, there's not really a lot of help with what you do when you're done. And there's not a lot of people paving the road for you and teaching you how to use the time that you have with your name, image, and
Mm-hmm.
likeness and
For
things
sure.
like that. So tell everybody about the book, and just let's talk about exactly why did you want to write this book out of all the books you could have written.
Right.
Why this topic was the one that you chose.
Yeah, so the book title is called Pressure No Match for Purpose, and the subtitle is Helping Athletes Transition from One Field to the Next. And I felt like in my personal experience, when it came to student athletes, we all have the pressures of whether in your high school, I have to get to college, or I'm not getting the attention as my friend is, and trying to be, in a way, kind of fit in so that you won't get left behind once they do get to the next level. And the same thing in college. Okay, how can I maximize my time in college and utilizing my brand so that when it is over, how can I parlay that into the next thing? And the next phase is, okay, when it is over, what do I do next? And so that's the perspective of the book, is framing in practical ways of how you can overcome that wall, and use my book as like a bridge to help you get through it. So
A little bit of a roadmap.
very
Yeah.
roadmap.
Now, when you were coming up, a lot of these words weren't even known. NIL.
Right.
Like, you're trying to help young people coming from a place where here's what I imagine you. I imagine you thinking like, I know I'm missing, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, but you don't know what to call it,
Right.
what you're supposed to do. And then now there's terminologies that say, oh, your brand. When you were in high school, did anyone ever say, Kenneth Scott, you have to work on your brand?
You know what's crazy? I didn't hear that phrase brand until my stepfather came to me. And so there was a receiver in my high school. His name was Maurice Shaw. And Maurice Shaw, I was a freshman. He was a senior. And when I was watching him, dude is flawless. Like, his movements, his skills, his route running ability, the way he catches the ball, it was effortless. And I was always looking at him. And towards the end of the season, where it was getting ready to be signing day, he signed to the University of Idaho, which is great.
Yeah.
But for me, I got discouraged, because how can someone I see that is so effortless and flawless not have the exposure to be going to a USC? Because to me, he was everything. And so that's when it clicked for me. And for my stepdad at the time, was like, this is more than you just being an athlete. You have to operate as a business. And that's where I started.
Because no one's going to do it for you.
Exactly. And that's where I got the term brand in my head. And so my pops at the time was like, hey, start worrying about your brand, your messaging, and developing that. Because a lot of the people in my school, they were just focusing on as an athlete, not really their whole self as a brand. So,
Give me an estimation about what year that was.
I'm aging myself, but that was 2007, 2006, 2007.
He may have been he's definitely ahead of his time using that terminology. Because usually that terminology was only referred to with artists.
Real.
Then it came over to athletes. And you could see a natural transition, right?
Right.
Artists for a long time, they were like, I just want to get signed by someone.
Real.
And then if anyone follows the music industry, a lot happened when things went digital. The old, what was the pirating thing? The
LimeWire.
No, before LimeWire, it was
MediaFire.
What was that one? No, it was the one kid that was the hacker that like was taking all the Napster.
Napster,
yeah. At that time, people started to realize, wait a second, someone could just take my song, my thing,
right,
and they just put it out there. So that's when artists started saying, I better have my own drink, my clothing line, my own label. I better be a partner in all my talents,
right,
instead of being just a participant. I saw a reel just today on YouTube. Mike Tyson was talking about this. He said he was really upset and angry with boxing. He said, I don't understand with boxing. He goes, why the fighter has to wait for someone to give the fighter's check to the manager in the promotion, and then they take that money and then they give the fighter his piece. He's like, the
Mm-hmm.
fighter should be the boss.
For sure.
The fighter should get the money, and then the fighter should be like, all right, here's my manager, here's my promoter.
Right.
So everybody should be working for him, because if it wasn't for him,
There would be
their
nothing.
job wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about that a little bit, because it sounds like to me that you're saying you see there's a lot of ways that kids could be misled.
Right.
There's a lot of false information, but there's also a lot of just people being naive and not knowing, especially a kid from a lower socioeconomic status.
For sure.
That doesn't have mentors and tutors above them.
Right.
To talk about that is because obviously that's a big reason why you put this in, like why the book focuses on helping athletes.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, there was a lot of recruiting agencies that would do the work for the athlete in regards to, I can get you 10 offers. Just sign up for my recruiting profile. I'll put you through that. I'll do all the things for you. And I just felt like that was a back gate for the athlete, because it's not empowering them. It's not teaching them anything. It's giving everything else and putting control in someone else's hands instead of your own hands, keeping your own destination in your own hands.
It's teaching the athlete like, oh no, you can't do that on your. It's too
Right.
complicated. You can't figure that. Let us take that pressure off you. Not realizing that there's a lot of nefarious things that can come about.
Right.
Especially if the kid's younger, and now with high school.
Exactly. And I felt like the kids were being used in a way and not in a proper way. And so I wanted to, with this book, I wanted to empower the student athletes with the education so they can be aware of how they can manage their own quote unquote business within themselves. So it's practical skills as far as manufacturing yourself as a product, knowing, I always talk about the 4 pillars, and the 4 pillars is your sport, academics, the community, social media. And so we do like a assessment or a report card, and we measure your performance, image, and exposure based off of those pillars.
And those pillars, like where you're at. Like, do you measure it like percentage, or how do you
grade wise, A, B,
grade-wise?
C, D, and F.
Okay. All
And the cool part about it is, for instance, a lot of kids in the sports pillar, they'd be like A's, B's, but in grades, it'd be like C, D. And then in community, they'd be like D because they're not really involved. And then social media, it'd be like a B, A. And then towards the ending part of the report card or assessment, I'd be like, okay, and I removed the sports pillar from it. Now what you got? And the sports, the grading was really holding everything up. But I'm showing them that once the sports gets taken away from you, this is what you really stand on: the education, the community, and then the network that you build. And if that's not up to par, then there's a problem. And so it's like giving them that bigger vision and that bigger perspective that you're more than an athlete, and it's not all about sports. At the end of the day, yes, sports is a great vehicle to get you to your destination, but it's not everything. It's one of the things.
When you're saying that, I thought of like 5 or 6 athletes that are no longer professionals in their sport, but their longevity was based upon they had a very unique community involvement. Not just their own physical community, but the community of their sport.
Right.
Like their personality. They were well liked by everyone. Their reputation was an A. Something about them was unique. It was very, they were easy to be accessed. Right. They were just, so they had, whether it be a social media, whether it be a personal following. One guy grew up as a surfer. One guy that came to my mind, his name's Rob Machado. Long curly hair guy, right, near my hometown. Right. The guy really, years and years ago, was done with the world tour. He was always a top 5 surfer. Even today, he's sponsored by the biggest companies in the world, and he's not even active pro, because he represents and embodies the lifestyle and the culture, and he's so involved in the community, but most importantly, he's got great relationships and everybody likes him. So when you said pull away the sports part and you look at the other thing, their grade could go from an A- B+ to a D real quick. So speaking about social health and stuff like that, it sounds like that's what you're trying to help them focus on. It's like, if you have a balance in all those things, let's say you're injured for a time period, but you have those relationships with the coach. People are like, man, well, this kid's a great student. Well, really? How do you know? Well, he works hard whether he's injured or not, whether he's in season or out of season. Okay, well, then that kid looks like he may come back from this injury because he's going to go to his rehab. He's going to show up to, if we have an NIL deal with him and we've got a commercial plan with him, he's not going to not make it because he's tired or because like he had a busy night last night playing Red Dead Redemption. Right. You know what I mean? Is that the name of the game?
Yes. It sounds like it.
I didn't know one of my friends is addicted to that right now. So.
Yes, that sounds or
Call of Duty, right?
Yeah.
And so all those things say a lot about that person's value, not just sports. So elaborate a little bit of that, because you're obviously seeing that with youth right now. Some have figured this out, and some you have to teach them how to do that.
Yeah, you do have to teach, and it's really figuring out, once we do that, it's figuring out, okay, a lot of them don't understand what their end goal is typically, or the reason behind
You mean
why
all of them?
Yeah, like they're like, yeah, I want to go to college. To go to college, just so basically they can fit in or whatever. They don't know the reason why they want to do things. And I always ask them, especially when we went to the leadership thing, it's like, give me 3 becauses after you tell me your reason. So for instance, I want to go to college because I want to get a free education. Why do you want to get a free education? Because I want to be the first in my family to boom, boom, boom. Why do you want to be the first in your family? Because I feel like that's going to be, so I tell them, like, give me a reason, but break down, give me 3 more because statements from that so that we can keep on peeling back that onion, because that's really going to be a driving force to keep you propelling through injuries, through when this is taking over and stuff like that.
Yeah, and some kids, they'll probably identify a different motivating factor that they didn't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
Some, like when you bring up the, first person in my family graduated from college, that's not a small thing.
Nope.
Grandmas and grandparents, that's a huge thing to them, right? So maybe for them, they're a trailblazer for their family.
Right.
Or maybe for someone else, they're showing their family there's a different path, right? Maybe they had other people in their family that had graduated from college, but after they graduated from college, they didn't do anything with it.
Right.
So the next because could be like, I want to graduate from college and take that to X, Y, or Z.
Yep.
Because my other family members said they went to college, got their degree, came back home, and just went to the warehouse and worked the same job. Yep. They didn't have a degree.
Exactly.
Everybody in their family did it, or something that was familiar.
Yep.
Or I know a lot of guys that I played with. I'm sure you might know 1 or 2 that's like, yeah, we played football together. They got their scholarship.
Yeah.
And then they started selling drugs.
You're like,
okay. What class was that?
I didn't take that class. Was it science?
I'm like, damn, I didn't know they offered that. No, that was
physics.
That was definitely arts.
Right? Arts. There we go.
That must have been the art degree. Just joke for all those art students out there. So you're helping them identify. There's got to be something of a balance. You got to identify why you're doing it, but also and many levels of stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Because at any one of those stages, high school, college, after college, if you don't have some sort of plan, then it's going to be easy for you to get, pushed off course. Now, like any mission statement for a business, things will change, right? You could kind of tweak it, but not having a plan and just rolling the dice, that's the worst plan possible.
Right. And so another thing is, like, after we understand you and understand your product, manufacturing that product of you, we dial in on, okay, who's your target audience? Because not everyone's Division 1, not everyone's Division 2, not everyone's Division 3. So knowing where you place and where you fit, that's when you can start creating your list based on your target audience and start finding your niche of who you need to attack to become more efficient and more basically profitable and increase your chances of getting a scholarship or getting seen.
So that's interesting because I never thought about having realistic expectations.
Yeah.
And with youth today,
everybody going D1. I'm going to Alabama.
Well, yeah.
They ain't even on varsity.
Today, it's like you feel like you want to walk around with like needles and pop everyone.
Like, come on, man.
It's yeah, it's just like when you hear kids like, oh man, I haven't been outside. I've been playing video games all day, every day, talking to my friends, but I want that girl that's beautiful over there.
Yep.
Well, you might need some work, son. Like,
yes, a lot of work.
You don't have any games, so don't go try talking to that girl quite
not
yet.
yet. Like,
get your stuff together. Start with combing
slow your roll.
Take a shower.
Yes, to do that. And so,
get
like,
some deodorant that your grandpa didn't use. Get some up to date deodorant.
No way, the old school cologne.
The old school cologne. Don't be putting on those Stetson. Your car still slaps though.
Man, see,
your car.
I
haven't worn that since high school.
Okay, I'm about to say I didn't do that. I ain't gonna lie. I went to like Kenneth Cole. I used to go to the mall and just get the slips, the samples, and just get stockpile the samples, and just wipe them on, stuff like that. Just
your car, like there was a Polo one. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, I digress.
Nah, you're good.
But realistic expectations, and I think with athletes that will all want to be the best. That might be. How do you help? Let me give you a scenario. Let's say you got a kid, sophomore in high school, got a little bit of playing time on the varsity squad. Right. The coaches see some potential and talent inside of that kid, and he's like, okay, I want to go D1. Let's say he's a local kid. I want to play for University of Utah, BYU, a big school like that locally. And you're looking at this kid, and he comes to you and says, so how do I get a scholarship at those schools? Because that's usually what they're going to say.
For sure.
Okay. How do you help that kid? Because sometimes when I'm helping someone, they're asking me the wrong question.
Right.
sometimes people don't know whether maybe they're just naive, they don't really know, but they're thinking like, oh, since that's the ideal, how do I get that? Not realizing that there's a lot of other things that have to be answered for that. So how would you help a young person
For sure.
that has some talent, but they're still a little, they weren't starting on varsity as a sophomore.
Right.
They're not a superstar, but they have some potential. Maybe they got a good little social media following.
Right.
So we're some basic things you do.
So for me, like when I mentioned like the target audience, for my steps, I need them to have some type of film on varsity, because that's what you're going to be selling to the colleges in order to be, put on that broad scale. But when I talk about target audience too, it's like researching those colleges. So for instance, we was talking about systems earlier.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to, if I'm a 5'11" quarterback and all I see on someone's roster is a whole bunch of 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" quarterbacks, why would I try to go over there when I know that that's not the type of person that they're going to recruit? I'm just wasting my time, and they're going to waste their time too.
You need to be getting your grades up and going to Air Force.
Somewhere I need,
or
what I'm
Navy.
saying? And so that's why, like, understanding those audiences. So for a kid like that, and he wants to go to Utah, depending on his measurables and things of that nature, I got to understand, okay, if he's a receiver, what type of receiver are you, right? Because based on what type of receiver are you, and then based on this team's fit, that may not be the best place for you. I know you want to go there, but that may not be the best
Weber
for you.
State may be better for you.
Right.
Or if we're in California, it's like, oh, I really want to play at Stanford. Well, you're not a big tight end.
Right.
And that's kind of their offense. So you may want to go to like San Francisco State or like, a smaller school.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if you don't play,
like, yeah, and that's
then
the
why
thing.
you working so hard?
Right, exactly. And that's one thing. So kind of going back onto the realistic. So I want to understand their goal. And since that I know their goal and that's where they want to go to, then I make it more realistic. And then the difference between the goal and realistic, we figure out that's between, that's the research behind it, figuring out fits. And once we figure out the target audience, the next step is selling and marketing yourself. So I look at those as two different pillars. So selling is more of a one-to-one type of communication, and marketing is more of a one to a broad scale, right? And so for selling, I want them to understand how the proper way to initiate a call, like what questions to ask, like basically developing scripts for those.
Or if a coach calls them in a recruiting situation, how to handle that.
Exactly.
Because one of the biggest questions right now, I just happen to know this because my nephew, he's a highly recruited basketball player in Utah right now. One of the questions the coach has been asking him, and he asked me, he's like, hey, man, like, how should I answer this question? Right? Just as a relationship thing, he asked me. I said, what's the question? He goes, they're asking me, are you one of those kids that are going to play here for a year and transfer somewhere else? Now, they gave different stories of what happened. I go, okay, why do you think they're asking those questions? Like, I think because it's been happening. And then he did a little research. A couple coaches have been talking to him. They'd lost kids, freshmen, highly recruited kids. They train them for a year, and then they go start at a competitive school or someone else, right? And so they're like, are you going to be committed to us? Or are you going to be one of those kids that if you don't, this was the real question. Are you going to be one of those kids that if you don't start your freshman year, are you going to transfer somewhere? They like 3 schools asked him flat out. And I told him how to respond to that. And because he's a committed kid, this was an easy response for him. But he simply said, he goes, I am not that kid in my life, with my school, with my grades, with anything. If I come and play for you, then you're stuck with me. And if I don't start my freshman year, then that means you guys, the coaches that I trust, have evaluated me, and I'm not ready to start. Yet. I'd rather start my sophomore year when I'm ready than go out as a freshman, get made fun of, totally choke. Now I'm all mental in my head, overthinking everything, because the freshman curse, man. True freshman curse. I had it. I know you had it too, a little bit, right?
That's what I'm saying.
You give a kid 18 years old a starting job on a D1 school. Huge. You gave him a lot of responsibility that most kids can't handle mentally. So he responded that way. The coach was like, you're the first person to say that. First person responded like, I trust in you guys, and if I don't start my freshman year, it's because you've evaluated that I'm not ready to start, and it's not nothing personal. And he goes, the coaches said, you know what? I'm so glad you answered that. And they opened up to him and said, I love these kids that I recruit, but after I coach them for a year, if they know that, I played at BYU, now I can go to some other school, or I played at Utah and I can go to some other school, and they can start there, the coach is like, man, like whatever happened to like working through it? And in their opinion, the portal was not made for, let me see if I like you and then I'm going to leave. It was made for those instances, those situations where it's like, you and your coach, that one simple coach, just have a bad relationship. It's not that you're not playing. It's not that he doesn't like. It's just more of a personality match.
Right.
Or maybe a new coach came in, the offense or defense got switched. Like, okay, like for those kids, like, oh, head coach now. How come the head coach can leave, but I got to stay here?
Yep.
It was made for that. So, my question for you is that when kids are going into college, how do you coach them in regards to communicate with the recruiter? Now, let's say a recruiter comes to them and asks them that question, and they start getting a good relationship with the recruiter. Are there any sort of pointers or stuff that you give them when they actually are getting recruited?
Yeah, for me, I tell them to focus on 5 things.
Because mine was a very specific thing. I want to know more generally because
no, you're good.
Have that question asked,
Like I tell them 5 things that they should focus on when choosing a school, and you surround your questions and on top of that. So the first one is obviously athletically, right? Everybody wants to come in, they want to find their role, own it, and fit into a system. So obviously you're going to surround questions about the scheme, the playing time, all that. The next one is academically, because you want to look in the future, right? Seeing what programs they have in place, externships, internships, things of that nature, so that after it's said and done, if I break my ankle, I can still be able to move forward in life, right?
Yeah.
Third is socially. Like, is it cool for me? Like, for instance, me coming from California, I'm coming to Salt Lake City. Like, socially, is it going to be a good fit for me? So ask questions like, hey, what is it like in the town? Like, especially me coming from, I've never been a part of a culture like this, Mormon, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, ask questions about that, see if it's fit.
You're like, do I need a jacket?
Yeah. No, really though, because California, I'm coming to the snow. I'm like,
I got 2 hoodies and a tank top.
Like that. It's tough. And then next is culturally. Like, does it fit? Like culturally for me, like for the team, like do we mesh and gel? And then lastly, what I tell is financially, like because, like for instance, myself, I knew my mom was going to be able to purchase plane tickets to get me all the way out to like Tennessee or Michigan, right?
That'd be hard.
Very hard.
Yeah.
But if I'm a flight to Utah is probably a $200 round trip. Or, if I wanted to come home, I can partner up with someone from California and drive me, right? So I tell kids to focus on those 5 aspects of it so they can be able to build questions around it.
Very good, very good. In fact, that leads me to the next question. What are some of the most common questions you get from parents?
The one thing about parents is they really don't know the process at all.
Yeah, I know.
Unless, and I'll give you an example.
Or if they think they do, that's even more dangerous.
And it's different because, like, for instance, some people are former athletes, parents are former athletes, and they're going back, it was 20 years ago or 15,
not
10
relevant.
years. It's not relevant anymore. And so they're thinking in the mindset like, oh, like back then type thing. But the main thing is for the parents is, okay, how can I get my son more exposure? Like, how can I get him into contact with college coaches and things of that nature? And then that's
more
when
eyes on my son or daughter.
Right. Yeah. And that's when I tell them, that's when you have to be your best salesman. So for me, when I was a sophomore in high school and after my sophomore season, they labeled me as ESPN top 150 in the nation as a sophomore. I was like, oh, I got a good product out there. So what I did, because I knew I was a Division I athlete, because all the Division I teams were reaching out to me.
Yeah.
I got every Division I school, put it in the Excel sheet. Well, it was a paper with columns. And I wrote
Excel-ish.
down. Yeah, Excel-ish, to modernize it,
Pencil, paper.
Pencil, for sure, without a doubt. And so I put every school in a column, then put their contact information, email, phone number, and then I put a box like recruiting questionnaire, and I put an X if I did it. And so
maybe like a date too, like contact them on this, they call me this. Seeing the patterns. Oh, that's very smart.
Creating basically my own CRM, customer relation management. That's what I did. And so whenever I got a letter from a recruiter, I would email them like, hey, I just got you guys this flyer, even if they didn't contact me. And I know they send these out to everybody, right? But the more familiar I am and my name is familiar to them, the more eyes are going to get on me. So that's why I was like, I need to call them biweekly. I need to email them every time I get a type of letter or anything. That way, if I keep on following up in constant communication, they're like, man, they're going to know my name. They're going to be like, man, let me go ahead and pull them up. Let me see what he's about.
I want them to be familiar with you.
Exactly. And that's what you're gaining.
But not bug them.
Right. And not bug them. But really have some value. Like when the letters come in, you don't have to be long emails. Like, hey, coach, man, I just got this letter in the mail. Man, I love the scenery in the background. I can only imagine what it'll be like playing in front of a jam-packed stadium.
Ooh, you know why that's so clever from a psychological perspective? Is that most kids, when they're getting recruited, their thought process is on who's interested in me. if you let a school know that you are interested in them and you are courting them, then it's a partnership. It's mutual. But a lot of kids like, yeah, I got these letters. They get the letters. They go and show them off to their friends, but they forget to call the coach and say, thank you for sending me the letter.
Boom. Yep. And that's the miss every time.
Very good. I like that.
Very miss.
Parents out there, listen to this, share this with your kids. Because just think about it. Would you say that the relationship in recruiting is very similar to dating?
Without a doubt.
Very similar to dating.
Very similar. There's so much synergy. And like, yes, I'm speaking towards
the
athletes.
You show the person that you're interested in them too. Eventually they're going to start calling you.
Exactly. And I don't want to deal with this person. And like, even though I'm saying the athlete can do this, parents can do this too. Yeah. Parents can help coordinate the emails, make sure
I think that's why you answered the question, because that's something that parents could really help out with.
Without a doubt.
And, I mean, when you're talking to parents, aren't they saying like, what can we do? What can we do?
Yep.
They want to be
that's what they can do.
They want to be of help to their kids.
And that's what they can do. So on top of that, being your own salesman, what I tell athletes is the people that are writing these blogs, these recruiting sites, those are the people you need to get in relationships with. Why? Every time someone stands out of the camp, they put their name in that paper. The college recruiter looks at that paper, and man, why did they put this kid in here? Boom, I'm going to click to his profile. If they click to that profile and they see you a good guy, I like this kid. All it takes is one article to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's just imagine if you're getting a letter from Colorado and, okay, you go to coloradorivals.com or 24/7, and you're like, okay, Dan Hutchinson is the one, boom. I'm going to follow Dan Hutchinson on his thing. I'm going to like and comment on his stuff. I'm going to build the relationship with him. Because I know if I build the relationship with him and tell him that I'm interested in Colorado and they're interested in me, he's going to want to interview me.
You know, that's very, I don't want to say the word clever. It's very intelligent because the people that it's their job to say they're writing stories, they're writing articles. You build that relationship with them. Then when they have a story to put out there about a game, they actually want to highlight you, especially if you're already doing good.
Yep.
Versus let's say you're talking through someone on Twitter. Let's say it's Instagram or whatever it may be. Someone writes an article on you. Thank you. I really appreciate so much. That made my day. You know, I know you're just doing your job, but like, that's really cool. Hey, I'm going to follow you, you know, and you just start liking that person's stuff. You just start showing them, hey, I'm appreciative. I'm not above you. And then let's say you get to college and that person be like, man, that kid was a good kid. Like, you know, they're going to do pieces on the local stage and local journalism for you. It continuously makes you relevant regardless if it's in the season or not.
Exactly. And
that's great advice, man.
That's the big miss for kids. I'm like, dude, why aren't you reaching out to these analysts? Like, and a lot of these analysts have relationships with the coaches. Yeah. And coaches have relationships with other coaches. And that's another key thing. Someone would down a Division II school because they're trying to get to D1, even though they're D2 level, they would down the D2 school, not knowing that the D2 school and D1 guy know each other possibly. And if you act away towards a D2 coach, he's going to be like, man, he's going to talk to the D1 coach and be like, man, you don't want to recruit, man. He's a whoop-de-whoop. Right? Just imagine Coach, when I was there, it was Coach Whittingham, Coach Hill, Morgan Scalley. Coach Hill, he wound up being a coach at a D1 AA.
Yeah.
Just imagine that dynamic. Like, I'm mean to Coach Hill. And what if Coach Hill and Coach Whittingham had a lunch together and be like, man, I've been noticing this one kid. And Coach Hill gonna be like, man, this dude was a total jerk. And Coach Whit gonna be like, well, I don't want him then.
Yeah.
Just because you down that school because of the level it was at. So, yeah, that's a huge miss.
Do you ever pull kids aside? Because I know you go to 7-on-7 tournaments. I know you're helping out kids more on like just consulting them.
Right.
And the thing about I love asking these questions to Kenneth is that Kenneth, like myself, for many, many years, just does it. Doesn't
right.
Hasn't been getting paid to do
At
it.
all.
Just helping like
for the love.
I can't help thinking how many times between the two of us we spoke and never asked for money and just spoke because you want us to be okay, we'll come and talk, right?
Getting paid with
Those
love.
days are getting over now.
Yeah.
Our kids are getting bigger. We gotta start making some money, right?
Nothing personal.
Not personal, but obviously we're doing it for the love of the youth, right? So in these situations, have you ever come across a kid where he's got great talent, whatever, but let's say you're at a 7-on-7 tournament and you see the kid wilding out through a temper tantrum. Everyone, it's the internet has made the world very small.
Very.
And we look at the NFL. We look at the problem child. The real what's that word they call them? The real
prima donna.
The prima donnas, right? Yep. We look at the prima donna guys.
And we glorify them.
People start going, man, there's a lot of talent. I don't know if they're worth the headache. You know, people like you gotta, even if you're scoring a lot of touchdowns or doing a lot of great things, you're a risk factor. You're an X factor. People don't know what you're going to post, what you're going to get caught doing in your own private life when you're having these blow-ups, stuff like that. So if you were to see a kid having like some real emotional struggles and challenges, now I know what you've been through in your life, so you could speak on this personally. What type of advice would you give to a young kid if he's a detriment to his own brand?
Man.
Or she, right?
It could be or she. So what I do is I'll take them to the side and I'll meet them where they're at, because I don't want to feel like I'm accusing them of anything.
Preaching to them.
Yeah, I want to be like, hey, man, what's going on, man? I see you out here trying to show up, man. What's going on, man? And then just laugh and joke with them just to kind of bring it down
Let
a
them
little
vent
bit.
a little bit.
Right.
Don't
and
come
then,
in like all trying to tell them what to do.
Yeah, and I'll be like, man, look, I was just in your shoes. I was a young kid just like you. Just trying to, a lot, like the moments may get to us and we act out. And then I'll just give them some game. Like, look, man, when it comes to, being in this type of era, social media area, like you mentioned, man, you're under a magnifying glass. Like everything gets blown out. And so I go back to the pie that I always talk about, the performance, image, and exposure. Like, man, you're a great athlete out there. You're doing amazing things. A lot of people know who you are as far as exposure, but right now your image isn't holding up, man. And that's one of the character factors that may cause you from not having future opportunities to get a scholarship. And so I just break it down to them in a realistic form. Like, man, I want you to go to the next level. So, so I put it to her like that. I want you to go to the next level. And so acting out like this is only going to diminish that for you. Yeah,
because the next level ain't going to come to you.
No.
You got to go to it.
And who's next? If you act out like that, for instance, like Devontae Christopher, man, he's a really good friend of mine. But like there was times where
he was another wide receiver.
Wide receiver at the U, and
playing
talented,
some games, not in some games. There's some stuff
talented.
Going on, right?
He's a talented receiver, and
for sure, he's a baller.
But there was times where he would lash out, and that's kind of like where I got my opportunity. And I remember it was Utah State game, and some things wasn't going right, and his image wasn't right, and it just takes that one point in time where a coach kind of gets fed up with certain things, and they're looking for the next guy, no matter how talented you are. And it's cool because now as he's gotten older, he recognizes his shortcomings and is forthcoming about that information. Like, man, I kind of was raising kind of HE double hockey sticks out there, and then kind of wishing like, dang, I shouldn't have done that. It would have been a lot better for me because of his brand, because he was a fantastic receiver. But it was just the perception of others and what they think about him, and that ultimately led them saying stuff to other people that negated his opportunities.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about in this past, and we both, when we played football in college, we both had to get some counseling, some therapy.
Facts.
We both were going through our own individual things, and for me, my off the field stuff definitely affected me big time. My reputation was not good, and and so I think the value. I'm glad you brought that up with Devontae, because we can look back in hindsight and tell the youth, like, hey, listen, your reputation has more value than you even know. Like you and I talk about, there's a currency to connection, and there's also, you don't have currency if you don't have connection with people.
That's real.
If your rule of thumb is you're always on time, you always have a good attitude, and then you come unglued one time, people give you the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
People are like, all right, that's the exception to the rule. He doesn't normally go wild like that. Like, he had a moment, okay, whatever. But if you're always coming out of character, and if you're always showing these deep emotional outbursts and blow-ups, now not only become a detriment to the chemistry of the team,
right,
you also become like you hinder the team.
Yeah.
And if you make a coach's job harder on you, and of course, talking to all the athletes that you talk to, regardless of what school they want to go to, if they pick a school like, hey, I want to go to Utah, I'm like, they don't want anyone but high character guys there.
Exactly.
Guys like Coach Winningham and Kalani Sitake, same thing. If you think you're going to show up there on talent, they have a place for you. It's called the portal.
Exactly.
You may not be there that long.
At all.
I think they've proven by benching guys, sitting guys. Rojo came on the podcast, and his attitude got him out of a lot of games when he was younger.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where there's certain things. It's like there's no one greater than the whole team.
That's so true. That's so true. It's crazy because even though I spoke about him, but my own personal story, my first year when I was coming off of injury, I was lashing out because I felt like I wasn't getting respect. And I'm like, do y'all remember who I was? Yeah. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so me trying to work back to like get to where I was and trying to prove myself out there. And so every time I make a play, I'm showboating. I'm like lashing out. Like, even though I'm thinking like I'm just showing this passion and energy and stuff like that, thinking that it
You're
was
like, I'm
good.
the alpha. I'm showing everybody. I'm the alpha.
I'm showing I'm back. I'm proving myself. It was hindrance to me, and I wind up getting suspended, like kicked off the team, put in counseling.
You actually put yourself away from the rest
Everything.
of your position group and other people around you.
I started creating friction with the coaches, teammates. I'm throwing my helmet. You know, you can ask my good friend Dexter Ransom. He'll tell you the story all the time. Like, I remember me just going in the locker room, just pissed, and I'm just socking on lockers. And one time he was right here next to me, and I'm socking on the locker, and he was right here, and the locker almost hit him. He was like, "Come on, little bro. Come on, little bro." Like, if that locker would have hit me, we would have had to throw hands in the air. Yeah.
And it's always a big dude. Like, oh, my bad, man.
And Dexter's bigger than me. Like, I'm 6'3", like 220, like, but Dexter's like 6'4", 235, you know, so he's big bro. Yeah. And so, you know, it's cool to have guys like that, like Dexter was for me, and telling me, like, man, chill out, man. Like, be cool. Like, and so
the voice of reason for that moment.
Without a doubt.
So that's what you're trying to do for the youth. Help them out on the financial side to see themselves, hey, listen, like, you have a lot more control of those things, those different pillars. I love the pie. Say that again for our listeners.
Oh, yeah, pie. You know, how good is your pie? You know what I'm saying? So the pie represents performance, image, and exposure.
Performance, image, and exposure.
And that translates to, you know, life after sports, too. Like, when you're trying to climb up the corporate ladder.
How many people have lost their job because of posts they post on the internet?
Right.
And how many people, when you're looking for a job, they go to your social media. That's a great background check. Is a lot of young people, they narc themselves out on their social media. They're like, I can't come to work today. I got the flu. Next thing you know,
they have the party.
Hey, man, that's a really nice outfit when you got the flu on at night and holding a drink or, you know, having fun or whatever. So last thing I want to talk about, too, is what we got coming up this week with Fremont High School. We're doing our second OG therapy assembly. You know, obviously, Fremont reached out to us.
Right.
And I told them what we got going on, you know, and they're really excited about that. One thing from whether it be working with kids with getting them to, you know, just meet their potential in athletics and in college and hopefully beyond. Whenever you talk to kids, what type of impression do you want to leave behind with them? Because I always talk about you being a high character guy. I always talk about people, when I say I don't think I just talk about this. Lots of people talk about this. But I think it's worth repeating and talking about again. Reputation.
Right.
We've talked about through the podcast. If you get the reputation as the person who more often than not is on point, more often than not shows up, and almost always working hard, people will allow you a certain margin of error. Right?
Sure.
When we go and talk to these kids on Thursday, when they hear you talk, you'll be performing songs, whatever. Because I'm putting you on the spot right now. So what are some of the most important things, whether it's this Thursday, anytime we're talking to kids, what impression do you want to leave them with in regards to you?
That's a great one. Regarding the impression I want to leave on kids or even anybody, it's just that you can always count on him to be there for you. You know, you can count on him like fingers. That's what I tend to tell. You know, I like to meet people where they're at and figuring out where the struggle points are and just figuring out a way of how we can help them get afloat on everything. So they can look at me as more of like a life jacket, you know, fingers they can count on. It's just being a good friend. That's really what it is. And knowing that I always have their back. Regardless of the situation, and it's always going to be there.
You know, the people that hear you talk, they wouldn't know this, but I'll say this. You leave the impression that you are your mother's son.
Yeah, that's true.
Without a doubt. Like, I had a privilege of talking to your mom a handful of times. Message her through Instagram, so like that, rocking the Quick Trip.
Yep. Oh, yeah. You see,
all
with the hat.
Red and black, you know, hat, stuff like that. So I tell people when I see him, like, Quick
Trip.
Yep.
Yep. She was rocking it.
But when I say you're your mother's son, what I really mean is that you're the same guy with these kids and in your personal day-to-day life than you are, you know, when you be sitting at your mom's dinner.
For sure.
That's who you are. Like the guy that can be trusted.
Yep.
The guy that's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna wild out, start cursing, getting crazy in front of your mom. You're not gonna be that way in front of youth or in business or anything.
Right.
Because when you say meet people where they're at, sounds like to me you're saying it's like you're gonna make people feel comfortable so they don't have to put on macho airs around you or try to go out of their way or like. If you approach someone and you come at them sideways, you may trigger some like, "What's up?"
Yep.
And you know, growing up, people, "What's up? What's up?"
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're best friends.
Yep.
Right? Like get in a fight with a kid, like, why we fight? I don't know. What's up?
I don't know.
Tomorrow? Okay, like, see you tomorrow,
Yeah.
right?
That was a good punch you did.
Yeah, exactly. And so you really do go out of your way to make people feel comfortable so that they don't have to worry about you, that you're going to be critical of them.
Right.
And any advice you give them is always coming from love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's always coming from a good place. And,
For sure.
And that's why I'm really excited about your book. Tell people where they can get your book.
Yeah, so everybody can get my book you can either go to kennethscott.me/books or just go straight to Amazon. If you got Prime, you can get it the next day.
And the name of the book again?
The name of the book is called Pressure, No Match for Purpose.
And we'll put a link to in this podcast episode. So if you're on Apple, if you're on what's the one with the green label? Spotify, man. I'm gonna play for a second.
I was like, green label.
Spotify, yeah, it's kind of like tilted a little bit.
Yeah.
Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, and also we'll put it in the link too when we have the reels coming up this week. And I'm excited. We're gonna do another podcast after the event, and then you and I got another speaking event after that.
Yeah,
so
we own it.
Them up. By the way, a little shameless plug.
Yep.
If you want OG therapy, me, Kenneth, and Rojo, Robert Johnson, if you want us to come up, talk to the kids about how life is all about relationships. And we talk about this thing called connection currency. And when we're talking to your kids, we're letting them know you do not want to neglect the relationships in your life. And if there's certain relationships out of order in your life, it is worth your time and attention to put those things in order. Because if you don't have your relationships in order, life's hard enough as it is.
Right.
Even if you have people that have your back. And, a lot of the kids we talk to, some of their relationships, it's not out of order because it's their fault. Some kids have some parents that are going through some hard times. Maybe they've lost a parent. Maybe the parent's locked up, or just going through their own issues, or like me, raised by a grandparent. Whatever it may be, if the youth of this generation puts a higher value on a relationship, specifically face to face, not just this kind of relationship. This should help you stay connected, but it should not replace connection, because you only get better at what you practice. That's a bar. And you start just going like this all the time, you only get better at this. And when you got to go to a job interview, when you got to talk to a potential coach, your coach on the field ain't gonna be like, "You dropped the pass, Kenneth, send," with like a mean face. Trust me, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have words for you,
without a doubt.
And if you have a good reputation, you put relationships at the highest priority in your life, you're going to be successful in whatever you do in your life. So we're going to be talking about the youth about that. This Thursday.
Can't wait.
Check it out. We'll have, if you haven't seen our flyer on there, if you'd like us to come and talk to your high school. We also do this for businesses as well. It's a little bit different if we do it for businesses, but high schools and businesses, that's who we're focused on, because let's face it, there's a lot in common between teenagers and their parents, and teenagers and teachers versus employees and bosses. Lot in common in the relationship, like the power hierarchy, right?
Without a doubt.
Anyways, love to hear from you guys if you're interested in having the OG therapy team come out do for your high school or for your business. And thanks, Kenneth, for coming. Now let's go get some food or hang out or kick or something like
for
that.
Sure.
And thank you guys for following us here on Light the Fight channel and on this episode of OG Therapy. And as always, thank you for helping us to light the fight.